if you are in Vegas, make sure you check out the Box Fan Expo. Okay? You'll get to meet many current and former boxers, guys like Thomas Hearns, Fernando Vargas, Badu Jack, Sean Porter, Eric Morales, Yoel Casamayor, and many more. Trust me, it'll be one of the best tickets you can buy, and it's the morning till afternoon of September 15th, the night of Golovkin Alvarez 2. So let's look at the tail of the tape. You got Gennady Golovkin, 36 years old, the WBA Super World Middleweight Champion, the former IBF World Middleweight Champion, the WBC World Middleweight Champion, and the IBO World Middleweight Champion. 38 wins, 0 losses, 1 disputed draw with 34 knockouts. Standing 5'10", with a reach of 69 inches. He has an 89% knockout rate. And he previously fought May 5th of this year. The challenger, Saul Alvarez, 27 years old. He'll be 28 soon. If he hasn't turned already, on fight night, he'll be 28 years old. Professional record, 49 wins, 1 loss, 2 draws with 34 knockouts. Stands at a height of 5'9" with a reach of 70.5 inches. He has a 67% knockout rate, and his previous fight was September 16th, 2017. Saul Alvarez hasn't lost in 4 years and had a 7-fight win streak entering the first fight with Golovkin, with 4 of those victories via stoppage. Gennady Golovkin has never lost as a professional and knocked out 22 guys in a row before going the distance with both Daniel Jacobs and Alvarez. Last time out, he scored a knockout over Vanes Martirosyan on May 5th of this year. In the first matchup, which most of the world believes Golovkin won, Adelaide Bird's negligent scorecard caused chaos. However, missing in that chaos was the card that was scored a draw. I think that card was off also. Even if you think it wasn't, you have to look at the 7th round where Alvarez landed some shots but clearly ran for most of the round. He lost it. The 7th round should have been scored for Gennady Golovkin. Yet, our boy, I haven't said his name in a long time, gave the 7th to Alvarez. It was a round that even Adelaide Bird got correct, which should have went to Golovkin. But our boy, you know who he is, Don Trella, coming to your area, causing mass hysteria. Don Trella. Listen, Bird's score was so terrible, it allowed Trella to get a pass, not only for the 14-14 card he had, but for the 7th round scoring. You say the name to most people and they'll be like, who is that? Who is Don Trella? However, you say the name Adelaide Bird and everyone knows, oh, Auntie Adelaide. Oh, I know her. Yet, if Trella scored 1 round the other way, just 1, Golovkin wins and moves on to unify with Billy Joe Saunders. Then maybe comes back and fights Canelo again a year later or so. But it didn't turn out that way. It set off a chain reaction. Then the IBF debacle took place. And, well, here we are today. The first fight was a game of cat and mouse. It was movement, pot-shotting, and counterpunching versus stalking, cutting the ring off, and trying to land a big shot. If you remember the first few rounds, Gennady started off very slow. I think he may have been astounded by the enormity of the event. Also, if you remember, there were some factors that prevented the fight from doing 2 million pay-per-view buys. If you remember, there were a few reasons Golovkin versus Alvarez didn't go over 2 million pay-per-views. I'll name two of the reasons. Firstly, Hurricanes Harvey and Irma caused Texas, Tennessee, Florida, Georgia, Puerto Rico, and the Carolinas, North and South, and other places to lose power. No power, no pay-per-view buys. The second reason is, if you recall, they slipped the McGregor fight in after Golovkin versus Alvarez was announced, and then put it on a few weeks before Golovkin versus Alvarez. So after forking out $100 a pop, most fans weren't going to turn around a few weeks later and pay for Golovkin versus Alvarez. So that hurt them big time too. I think if those two things didn't happen, the first encounter would have reached 2 million buys, or certainly something a lot closer. Some adjustments Golovkin needs to make. First, he needs to get off to a faster start. For sure. For like the first few rounds, Golovkin seemed to be lost in the allure of the bright lights, almost as if he was nervous. Well, most people will say now that he's got his feet wet, he'll be all right for the rematch. The nerves will be gone. I can see it going the opposite way. There is so much at stake for both men in this rematch. The loser could find himself in a tough spot. For Alvarez, he's going to have to stand his ground a bit more and not be so back foot heavy. He should also stay with his jab throughout the fight. And those are some adjustments both guys can make. I believe Saul Alvarez juiced for and prior to the first fight. Not only has his physique changed in a way that goes against natural development, but he has a different kind of explosiveness that was lacking a few years ago. Now, he's being tested now, but drug testing, especially in boxing, doesn't seem to mean anything. Especially if it is USADA, especially if it is the WBC clean boxing program. Not only is that program a lottery, but it's a conflict of interest. Personally, don't be fooled into thinking the drug test is ahead of the chemist. Often, it's the other way. Don't be surprised if that's the case at the moment. I can't trust the sport. Also in the first fight, Abel Sanchez claims the Nevada Commission allowed Alvarez to go tape, gauze, which is illegal, instead of the proper way of gauze, tape. Okay, if they allow that, that's illegal. If you want to see how Felix Trinidad got his power, it was those illegally wrapped hands. And if you're going to the Box Fan Expo, ask Fernando Vargas. He'll tell you all day about that. Now, I threw a couple scenarios at Sanchez, and I asked Abel if the hands are illegally wrapped in the rematch and Nevada clears it. I gave him a couple of scenarios. I asked him if he would protest and not fight until they rewrapped Canelo's hands, or would he fight fire with fire and wrap Gennady's hands like Canelo's, since the commission allows it. And Abel's response was basically, two wrongs don't make a right, and that Team Golovkin will play by the rules and they'll wrap his hands legally. Now, I respect him for that, but I'll be critical if they don't make some noise about Canelo's wraps. Being hit with illegally wrapped hands over 12 rounds could be more detrimental than being hit by someone who juices. Now, we may have saw that with the shot that Vanes Martirosyan hurt Golovkin with back in May. Watch the fight. Golovkin usually walks through stuff like that. He was hurt, clearly, and the HBO broadcasters picked up on it. Could the punches taken by Canelo's illicitly wrapped hands in the first fight have put a dent in Golovkin's invincible chin? You think Team Canelo didn't see the Martirosyan shot landed on tape? Stay tuned. Let's take a look at some of the strengths. Canelo, hand speed, combination punching. He has good power. Canelo's also a great boxer. Canelo moves better than Golovkin and can fight moving forward or backward. Saul's also an excellent counterpuncher, as well as a great body puncher. He has good defense, including great upper body and head movement. Canelo throws a great uppercut and even a better left hook. He has a fantastic jab and very solid chin. He's never really been down. For Golovkin, Gennady has fierce punching power. He's very strong and has fantastic balance. Golovkin has a solid chin. He also understands how to cut the ring off. If you look at some of his fights, especially against guys with power, Golovkin has underrated boxing skill, including possibly the best jab in boxing. Finally, he's a good body puncher, although he neglected it in the first encounter. And those are some of the strengths for each fighter. Let's take a look at a couple of the weaknesses. For Alvarez, he is flat-footed often. Sometimes he also winds up to throw big punches, and while doing so, he leaves himself wide open. Lastly, stamina issues have abounded in some of his fights. Trout, Lara, the Mayweather catchweight fight. For Golovkin, he gets hit more than necessary sometimes. He chooses that style. Golovkin headhunts sometimes and loses his technique. You can look at the Alvarez fight and certainly the fight with Kell Brook. Another weakness is his age. He's almost 37 years old. And lastly, for Golovkin, he doesn't have the fastest hands. And he's going to have to improve that if he wants to win this fight. The keys to victory. For Alvarez to win, he's going to have to use his faster hands to get to Golovkin. He's also going to have to increase his output. This will require he stand in the pocket and not run. Alvarez needs to keep throwing combinations to back G up and force G to reset. He also must try to slip the jab and counter. One thing he may try to do is land punches early on to make a statement. And one way he can do that is to use his jab. Another key is to test Golovkin's body. He may find something there. Alvarez should also stay off the ropes and try to keep the fight in the middle of the ring. Alvarez should also throw punches in combinations. And when doing so, stay inside of Golovkin. Lastly, throw the uppercut. For Golovkin to win, he must establish the jab and do not abandon it. Also, get in proper range to land the big shots. As in the first fight, he should force Canelo backwards. G has to come out like the 2008 Golovkin or Mike Tyson and try to mow Canelo down. Be active. Don't let Canelo steal rounds. Remember, it's a Golden Boy card. You need to finish strong. Be very aware of Canelo's counter shots. It's actually the left hook of Canelo that nobody talks about. I've seen it. It's dangerous. Golovkin needs to go to the body. Golovkin also needs to make better adjustments than he did in the first fight, such as shortening up his right hand. Canelo made him miss the big right hand quite a bit in the first fight. Everyone talks about Gennady being wary of Canelo's counters. However, nobody talks about Golovkin allowing Alvarez to take the lead at some point in the fight and attempting to counter him. Think Golovkin versus Gil, the knockout. See Golovkin versus Gabe Rosado in the 6th round where he countered under Rosado's jab with an uppercut that staggered him. It's like the first 10 seconds of the round, so you won't have to look for it. He didn't counter over the jab, but under with an uppercut. It's crazy. If you go to that same fight with about 25 seconds left in the 3rd round, he counters Rosado's jab, but this time he went over the top. The difference is he shortened his right hand And for Canelo, this may work better for him because he missed that overhand right all night long, like Lionel Richie in his first fight. Lastly, whenever a guy has much faster hands, as Canelo does, punch with him, especially if you have a good chin. And think Tarver versus Jones, the second fight, the knockout. The prediction. Gennady Golovkin has some things working against him in the rematch. First of all, with Saul Alvarez, there always seems to be a scorecard that not only goes in his favor, but it's unreasonably wide in his favor. In the Austin Trout fight, one card read 116, 111, and another read 118, 109. No way. In the fight with Floyd Mayweather Jr., one card gave him 6 rounds. He won 3 or 4 rounds tops, and many didn't give him that much. In the Erislandy Lara fight, one card read 117, 111 in his favor. No. In the Miguel Cotto fight, there was a 119, 109 card in his favor. In the Amir Khan fight, one card had it 49-46 Canelo, when it was clear he lost most, if not all, rounds before the knockout. I'm going to have to check that judge, see who it was. In the first Golovkin fight, he had a 118, 110 card in his favor. Now, that corrupt or inept judge is back in action, by the way, and nobody cares. I can't trust boxing. So Golovkin, or Team Golovkin, knows a couple of things. Any close round will go to Alvarez, which means Golovkin can't just try to beat him or beat him up. He has to knock Alvarez out to win, or at least drop him a couple of times. Secondly, if this fight goes to pattern, all Alvarez has to do is win 1 out of 2 cards. The third judge will already be for Canelo. So while Canelo will have to win 1 out of 2 cards, Gennady will have to win 2 out of 3. You follow me? Earlier I mentioned both guys have to go to the body. Oddly, I think Canelo has a better chance to do some damage to Gennady's body than Gennady has to do to his. Now, that goes against what we've seen. I mean, who can forget the way Gennady caused Matthew Macklin's body to crumble to the canvas? Does anyone remember the weigh-in for the first fight? Did you see Golovkin's face look drawn in? I mean, I did. I remember he was chewing gum the entire time and he looked dried out. But it was all in his face. You could see the marks on his face as if he was kind of drained. It just looked drawn in or drawn out. Canelo, on the other hand, looks solid at the weight. A little too solid, if you ask me. I watched boxing for many years, and we've seen this movie before. The young gun takes on the old lion, and the old lion performs well in the first fight. So much so, there's demand for a rematch. You follow me? Think Jersey Joe Walcott against Rocky Marciano. Great first fight by the old Lion. Almost got it done. Think Glencoff Johnson versus Chad Dawson. That first fight. Johnson thought he won. Some fans thought he won. He hurt Dawson. This was prime Dawson. Usually, however, in the rematch, the older boxer always looks like the older boxer. The younger guy usually dominates in the rematch. I'm going with Saul Canelo Alvarez in the rematch. I think his youth, his skill, and his athleticism will be too much for the closer to 37 than 36-year-old Golovkin at this point. He'll be a little quicker than before. He'll hit a little harder than last time, hand reps notwithstanding. I think he'll be a bit more proficient defensively, and he'll bring more offense. He is in his physical prime at just about age 28, almost 9 years younger than Golovkin. And don't think this kid isn't fighting with a grudge either. He wants to prove, whether he's passing tests legitimately or not, that he can beat this guy and shut people up. Let me close by saying this. This is the initial prediction. I really want to see what both guys look like at the weigh-in. Any gamblers out there? It's risky, but a nice bet would be to bet the draw in this fight. Imagine that. This fight really has trilogy written all over it. Win or lose. Golovkin, I think, would be too past it by the time a rubber match rolls around 8 months later. This fight is high stakes. It's a must-win for both guys. The establishment, well, you know who they want. They're going to go at youth. They're going to go at that. They got that cash cow mentality, so I'll do a video after the weigh-in to see if my thoughts have changed. Right now, the pick is Saul Canelo Alvarez. Catch you in the next one.